e4, c5, knight f3, e6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, d6, f4.
Not the most popular move, but a logical one. White can potentially push on with f5 or e5 if black isn't careful.
a6, bishop e3, b5, queen f3, bishop b7, bishop d3.
Question. Black must make a decision about his knight on b8. Should he place it on d7 or c6 in this position? Answer. Here d7 is the best square, as on c6 it can become something of a tactical liability. Kasparov played knight b to d7. Let us look at the alternative. Knight c6. The problem with knight c6 is e5, followed by d takes e5. Knight takes c6. Queen c7. It appears black is winning a piece back. But knight takes b5. Exclaim. It takes b5. Bishop takes b5. Leaves white with a clear advantage. The alternative, knight a5, is the best move. But after queen g3, knight d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, castles, white is far better developed and can think about attacking black with f5. Always be careful when choosing where to develop the queen's knight.
Knight b d7, a3.
The alternative, g4, is more direct and threatens to play g5, as the f6 knight cannot retreat to d7, because its comrade stands there. We'll consider it in the notes to Polygar vs Polygevsky game. With a3 white tries to stop the threat of b4, but it does allow black an extra move to develop.
Rook c8. Castles.
Question. How should black develop the bishop on f8? Answer. It is possible for black to play it to e7, the normal move, but also to fianchetto it on g7, although this takes slightly longer to carry out. The pawn on g6 does nullify white's light-squared bishop on the b1 h7 diagonal.
Bishop e7.
As noted, g6 and a kingside fianchetto is another way to play. This is an attempt to save some tempi over the game continuation, as Kasparov ends up playing bishop e7 to f6 to g7 anyway. Here, queen h3, knight c5, e5, knight d5, knight e4, knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, knight takes e3, queen takes e3, bishop takes e4, queen takes e4, d takes e5, queen takes e5, queen takes d4 check, queen takes d4, bishop c5, queen takes c5, rook takes c5, rook f2, king e7. Left black a touch better in the double rook endgame in Vega vs Jiri. European Championship, Rijeka 2010.
Rook a e1. Castles. Queen h3.
With this move white gets his queen off the h1 a8 diagonal, and hopes to threaten mate on h7, after a subsequent e5 push. Another idea is to play g4 g5, and kit the f6 knight away.
Knight c5.
As expected, Kasparov shows impeccable understanding of the position. Rather than being afraid of the e5 push, he counterattacks against d4, and at a stroke is able to exchange off the potentially dangerous piece on d3. That bears down towards his king on h7. The move also allows black a square on d7 for his other knight, should he so need it.
Bishop f2.
Question. Is it good for black to play h6 in this position to prevent white's potential attack down towards h7? Answer. Although h6 is a move black should certainly consider, especially as there is no bishop on e3 that can sacrifice itself on h6 anytime soon. Black often goes for g6. In these Sicilian positions, this is because the h7 g6 f7 e6 structure is still extremely solid and the pawn on g6 blocks the bishop on d3 stone dead. The dark squares can also be covered with rook e8 and bishop f8, which is an important defensive idea in the Scheveningen. Indeed, as well as the move played in the game, the alternative g6, f5, e5, knight f3, knight h5, threatening to come to f4, was also playable.
Knight fd7. King h1.
Question. Why did white play king h1? Answer. Such moves are generally classified as waiting moves. White tucks his king away in the corner and awaits developments. He wants to avoid any potential tricks on the g1-a7 diagonal. Although now it walks into the line of the b7 bishop, which could be potentially hazardous for white. If white doesn't feel like hanging around, he might lunge forward with f5. But then black has a nice counterattack in the center with e5. Knight de2. Knight f6. Knight g3. d5 exclam.
Bishop f6.
Exercise. Can white now go for e5, attacking the f6 bishop and unleashing an attack on the pawn on h7? Answer. No. After e5, black has the shot knight takes d3 exclam. When all the tactics work in his favor. E takes f6. Knight takes f4. Queen g4. Bishop takes g2 check. King g1. Queen takes g6. Bishop e3. Bishop takes f1. Rook takes f1. e5. Bishop takes f4. Queen g6. Queen takes g6. F takes g6. And white will emerge and exchange down for no compensation.
Rook d1. Rook e8. Bishop g1. g6.
Again h6 was playable. But here black fianchettos his king's bishop before deciding how to strike back in the center in the Scheveningen. It is all about flexibility. Black waits for the right time to strike back with an e5 or d5 break.
Knight d2 e2. Bishop g7. f5.
This is a typical move that white plays to try to launch an attack. Here, though, it seems rather loose, as now black has a lovely square on e5 for his knight to hop into. A knight on e5 would be a wonderful piece, as it cannot be attacked. It is on an outpost, and defends the g6 square, as well as counter-attacking against the c4 and d3 squares.
Queen e7. Bishop d4.
Question. Should black exchange the dark squared bishops? If not, what should he do? Answer. Although it wouldn't be immediately disastrous for black to do this, it would allow white to push on with f6 more easily. Black should generally not allow white to get a pawn to f6, as this can become a major thorn in his side. To prevent the exchange of bishops, black can play knight f6, which attacks e4, and retains the flexibility to play e5 at some point. Or knight e5, which places the knight on a secure square, and also nullifies the scope of the bishop on d4. After knight e5, black keeps the dark squared bishops on board. Knight g3. Knight c takes d3. C takes d3. Bishop c6. Knight ge2. a5. Black expands on the queen side, as he has everything in order on the king side. Knight f4. b4. A takes b4. A takes b4. Knight ce2. E takes f5. E takes f5. Queen b7. And black has a pleasant position. The game continued as follows.
Knight f6. Queen g3.
Exercise. Should black capture on e4? Answer. Capturing on e4 would lose a piece tactically. Knight takes e4 question mark. Bishop takes e4. Knight takes e4. Knight takes e4. Bishop takes e4. Bishop takes g7. And if king takes g7, then f6 check is white's trick.
e5 exclam.
Perfectly timed by Kasparov. As e4 is under threat, white must capture on c5 and accept a bad position, or sacrifice the e4 pawn, and hope he attains some compensation. Of course, against Kasparov, this is hardly likely to work. Bishop takes c5. D takes c5. Knight g1. c4. Bishop e2. Knight takes e4. Knight takes e4. Bishop takes e4. Leaves black clearly winning. A pawn up with a better position to boot.
F takes g6. H takes g6.
Two possible alternatives are available. E takes d4. Also works for black. But Kasparov plays it safe. Very likely he reasoned that there was no point in giving white any fun at all. Here. G takes h7 check. King h8. Knight takes d4. Knight f takes e4. Bishop takes e4. Knight takes e4. Knight takes e4. Queen takes e4. Was also fine for black though. F takes g6. Is another idea. The rook on e8 can return to the newly opened f-file and perform some useful defensive and attacking duties.
Bishop e3.
Instead, bishop takes c5. D takes c5. Threatens c4 trapping the bishop, and although white keeps his pawn on e4 for the time being, he will be forced back in time.
Knight f takes e4. Bishop takes e4. Knight takes e4. Knight takes e4. Bishop takes e4. Knight c3.
Exercise. Should black capture on c2? Answer. Although bishop takes c2 nets a second pawn, from a practical point of view, this move would allow white some counter chances starting with knight d5 ideas. After rook d2, bishop f5, knight d5, queen e6. Black is better, but there's still work to be done. Or white can play rook takes f5, g takes f5, bishop h6, queen f6, rook takes d6, rook e6. Also wins for black. But again, why give the opponent any play?
Bishop b7 exclam.
Covering the d5 square. Now black is just a safe pawn up. The safest course of action is to play the position safely. The bishop on b7 covers the d5 square and prevents the knight from jumping into this nice square.
h4.
White wants to play h5 to try and prise open the g-file towards black's king.
Rook c4 exclam.
Now the counterattack comes.
Bishop g5.
On h5. Rook h4 check. King g1. Rook takes h5. Stops white's counterplay dead.
Queen e6. Rook d2.
or h5. Rook g4. Queen e3. Rook takes g2 is crushing too.
Rook g4. Queen d3. f6. White resigns.
White resigned, as he is losing to the neat tactic. Bishop a3. Rook takes g2 exclam. Rook takes g2. Queen h3 check. And mate on the following move. Kasparov made it all look so easy. He timed his center pawn breaks perfectly and efficiently dealt with any attacking ideas his opponent tried to generate.